Sang every once in a while, one of the songs that we sing is and it can be a song that I've been singing for my whole life. Like I have known this song, When My Love to Christ Goes Weak. I've known this song my whole life. I have been singing it for as long as I can remember, and at some point, I think I realized that this song is really beautiful and very deep, and it actually addresses the two most serious problems that we have in our lives. And I was thinking about the song one day, and I thought to myself, I should do a lesson that's kind of wrapped around this song. And it's a helpful song for me. It's a very simple thing that is expressed in this lesson, talking about problem number 1. When my love to Christ grows weak, and when for deeper faith I seek. That's problem number 1. Then in thought I go to thee, Garden of Gethsemane. When my love for man grows weak, and when for stronger faith I seek. There's problem number 2. Hill of Calvary I go, to thy scenes of fear and woe. And there, behold his agony suffered on the bitter tree, and see his anguish, and see his faith, and see his love triumphant, even in death. And then to life I turn again, learning all the worth of pain, and learning all the might that lies in a full self-sacrifice. One day, after having sung that song, I was going back and just reading through the words of it, and I was like, it gave me chills. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, where you have sung a song and sung a song and sung a song and sung it and sung it and sung it and sung it and sung it. And then one day, you kind of hone in on something that you never picked up on before in the song, and it just kind of gives you shivers. I don't know if you've had that experience or not before. I have had many times, I think probably because I grew up singing so many of these songs and have known them since before I can remember. And then one day I realize what the song means, and I'm just like, whoa! This song is one of those songs that when I finally grasped how profound and simple it was, I was like, I need to say something about this song. And so this lesson is my saying something about this song. 2 problems that we all have sometimes. Our love for Christ grows weak, and our love for men grows weak. And one solution, looking at Jesus in the garden before he goes to the cross, and then seeing him there on the cross. These are kind of the same 2 problems that we find in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 27. In Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 27, these challenges are noted in the form of what we consider the greatest commandment. Behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, well, what is written in the law? And what is your reading of it? So he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. In Matthew chapter 22 and verse 40, consider what Jesus says about this. He says, on these 2 commandments hang the law, all the law, and the prophets. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. They are the 2 fundamentals from the perspective of the Old Testament mind and people that specialized in the Old Testament, in the Old Covenant. Jesus says there's nothing else that really matters without these 2 being in place. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 things. Love God and love your neighbor. And I think what we learn from what Jesus says about this is that it's a challenge to love God as we should. It's a challenge to love Christ as we should. It is not described with language that God intends to make it sound like a small thing or an easy thing. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That language is God coming right out and telling us that there are going to be times where we're really going to have to apply ourselves to this task. And I've talked about what God means when God says love before. I'm pretty sure that I have shared that lesson, that God hears love and sees love and reads love differently than men tend to. But it's very important for us to get this, that God, when he says you are to love the Lord with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, he's not saying that you are to love him deeply and passionately and irresistibly, that you're supposed to experience this overwhelming rush of feelings constantly every day of your life with regard to God. But that is a human reading of the idea of loving something with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And when we write love songs and we use that kind of language, we're talking about how we feel. God is talking about the challenge of it, that it requires the application of our thoughts and our strength. God is saying that loving me is something that you're really going to have to set your mind on. You will love me if you are determined to, because there are going to be all kinds of things out there that are going to work to prevent you from it. Satan, of course, prowling, ravenous, roaring lion, dedicated, crafty, deceitful, working to find something that he can use as a wedge to get in between us and God and in between us and loving God. The world is full of things that are here and now and tangible that we can touch and we can see and we can feel and we can smell and we can hear and we can taste. And the world is full of these tangible things that we interact with regularly that are distracting. And Satan doesn't want us to think about God when we are interacting with the things that God has made. He wants us to simply interact with the things that God has made without giving any thought to where they come from. And then if it were up to Satan, we would forget about God when the good things happen, and then we blame God when the bad things happen. When there are things going on that we don't like, Satan can get in between us and God. He gets us to be mad at God, to be angry at God, to challenge God's goodness in our own hearts, to doubt it. To doubt that God loves us, to doubt that God has the power to do anything to help us, to doubt that God is even there. He knew better than to try that with Adam and Eve. He simply attacked God's character. And his effort with Eve was to try to get her to doubt that God genuinely wanted what was good for her. So it is a challenge to love God as we should, because there are so many things that Satan has at his disposal, things that are not bad in and of themselves, things that are things that God has given us, things that God would want us to enjoy and benefit from. But if Satan can take them and twist them and use them against us, he absolutely will do that. Satan will take all manner of things that are morally inert. They are neither good nor bad. They are simply things that are, and use those things to tear our attention away from God. And we can't see God. We believe in God on the basis of faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It's easy for us to believe in the things that we can see and touch. It's not so easy for us to believe in the things that we believe in on the basis of evidence. We have to think and reason it through. And so there's a little bit of a disadvantage for us in that God asks us to believe in him on the basis of evidence that he has provided if we want to see it. And it's there. And there's a lot of it. But we have to want to know it. We have to desire to understand His Word in order to see that it is plain that He wrote it. And so there are challenges. It is a challenge to love Christ as we should. It is a challenge to love God as we should, and that is why God says you have to do this with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. It will require your determination and your dedication and the things that I have given you. It's also a challenge to love people as we should. Let me catch up with my PowerPoint here. It's a challenge to love people as we should. Not for all of the same reasons. The most different reason, I would say, is the fact that people are often not easy to love. I wish that I were always easy to love. I am not. Sometimes I am grumpy. Sometimes I am sick. Sometimes I cough on the back of your neck in church. I'm pretty sure I did that this morning. Sometimes we're distracted. Sometimes we're paying attention to something when we should be paying attention to a person. There are all kinds of reasons why people are hard to love. Sometimes people don't want our love. Have you ever tried to love someone that didn't want your love? Or to give attention to someone? Or to give anything to someone that you cared for that didn't want it from you? They don't want it. To try to help someone that doesn't want your help. To try to share your faith with someone that doesn't want it. People are hard sometimes. Many people, they don't want to need anybody. They see that as a sign of weakness to admit that they need someone. They don't want to need your attention or your love. Sometimes people are mean. Sometimes people react badly to our efforts to get to know them or to express our affection for them. Sometimes people say awful things. Sometimes people take political or social positions that are offensive to us. There have been so many times where I've been on some form of social media and I've seen someone express an idea that just really made me angry. And then I go and I look at their profile and I'm like, what do you know? This person is just like me in a lot of ways. But just on the basis of the opinion that they expressed, I was mad at them. I'm like, oh, I would love to give this person a piece of my mind. I won't do it on social media because I'm a Christian and I'm a preacher. And I don't want to lose my job because of something I posted on social media. That shouldn't be any kind of restraint for me. The fact that I'm a Christian should be sufficient restraint for me. But there have been many times where someone has expressed something, and my response to that was, okay, it's in the King James Version of the Bible, stupid. How stupid could you be? I've got a joke that I tell once about being somewhere, and I thought that I heard someone use bad language, and then the thought occurred to me that they may have just been reading out of the King James. So, maybe. I'm glad you thought that was funny. I kind of blew the punchline on that, but someone came up to me after a sermon and was like, we're trying to teach our children not to use that word. And I'm like, but it's in the Bible, It's context, context matters with some words. But I will read things that people post sometimes, and I'm like, how can you call yourself a Christian and post that on social media? And I get really disgusted with them, and then I go and I look at their profile, people I don't know, and I'm like, they're really very much like me. I mean, they like a lot of the same things I like, and it kind of, I've discovered that knowing someone outside the opinion that they post on social media sometimes softens how I feel about the person. Like when you're in traffic and you're angry at somebody for doing something in front of you, and then you realize you know them. You're like, oh, that's Susie up there. It was a friendly honk, I was just, hi. You know, it softens how we feel about those things sometimes when we know people, but the truth is, people do things sometimes that make it hard to love them. People hurt other people. Sometimes people can't be trusted. Sometimes people take advantage of other people. Sometimes people sin. And, if we were to just make a list of all the reasons why it's hard to love people, and then if we're being honest, make a list of all the reasons why it can be hard to love us, and I think maybe even why we have a hard time loving ourselves sometimes, because we know ourselves so well and we know the things that are wrong with us, we find that it's pretty easy to admit that people can be hard to love. But here we have this command. Love your neighbor as yourself. The song tells us or points out to us that the solution is the same. When my love to Christ grows weak, or when my love for man grows weak, there's something that I can always do that can kind of help with that. What the song says is that maybe when we're struggling with either one of those two things, we might just take some quiet time and go in thought to the Garden of Gethsemane and see in our mind's eye what happens there and what Jesus puts himself through in the hope that man might be reconciled to God. In the hope that in that reconciliation between man and God, man might find reconciliation with man. We can go to the hill of Calvary and see in our mind's eye what happens there. To see Jesus friendless, suffering on the cross, and not turn away. When I imagine it, I have an impulse to turn away, to look away. There was a movie that Mel Gibson did years ago, The Passion of the Christ, that I think details the crucifixion. I'm afraid to watch it. I've had so many Christians tell me, oh, you need to watch that, it's powerful. I said, I have no doubt it's powerful. I have no doubt. I have an instinct to turn away from suffering. It's hard for me to look at it. And I think most of us, we feel that. If we see something about to happen to an animal, like you're driving down the street and you see an animal running towards the street and you see oncoming traffic, I don't know if you've ever been like, I don't want to, you don't want to see it. I don't want to see that kind of thing happen. I don't like watching people getting hurt. There's these YouTube channels that just have video after video after video after video after video of people doing kind of dumb things and getting hurt. And I'm just like, ow, no, I can't. I hate seeing that. And to imagine Christ hanging there, beaten, held to the cross by spikes, struggling to breathe, trying to see that and not letting myself turn away from that sight in my mind, it helps to put in perspective how petty I can be in my treatment of other people sometimes. To remember what Jesus did so that that person that I'm mad at or that person that I'm struggling to love could live with the same hope and peace and purpose that I have. And to be reminded of the fact that God does not love me more than he loves that person, because Jesus hung there and did that for that person just as much as he did it for me. The song is trying to give us that perspective. when we struggle to love God, when we struggle to love man, there are these things that God did for us in the person of his Son. And if we will allow ourselves to focus on what happened, focus on Christ in his agony, and see his anguish, and see what that represented, and grasp that, it has the ability to take all of the things that get shifted out of proper position in our minds and in our hearts and in our priorities and put them back where they're supposed to be. See his faith. See the strength of his faith and be encouraged by that. See what faith can do. See his love win. And what did it win? What did Jesus' love win? It won our salvation. Even in death, his love won our salvation. And then, having seen those things and contemplated them, to turn back to life. Then to life I turn again, the song says, after seeing these things. Learning all the worth of pain and learning all the might that lies in a full self-sacrifice, and have our courage and strength and commitment to setting ourselves aside for the benefit of others renewed. It should motivate us to be reminded of what can be accomplished when we are willing to set ourselves aside for the benefit of others. And that is what we often lose in the course of living our lives and interacting with people and getting so distracted and forgetting who God is and forgetting what God has done and forgetting that every other soul out there is every bit as precious to God as ours is. And so, having done that, turn back to the challenges of life and understanding what can be accomplished when we sacrifice for the benefit of others. There are real challenges in life, but these are the ones that really matter. Loving Christ and loving others. And most of the problems that we face in our lives are going to relate typically somehow to a lack of love for God or a lack of love for our fellow man. And when these things are revived in us, when they are stimulated, good foundations are rebuilt and strengthened and restored. We will find the solution to most of our problems in the cross. This is why I think on the first day of the week, Jesus wants us to turn our attention back to the cross, to remember what was done there, and to remember that his resurrection proves our resurrection, our reason for hope, our reason to look forward to something, our reason to put up with the things, the hard things that we put up with in this life, and to keep going back to the cross and keep restoring our commitment to loving God and loving man. Eternal life is there for us if we believe the message of the cross. When we are buried with him in baptism and rise to walk out of the waters of baptism in new life with hope and peace and purpose.